Hello everybody. Recently my father has been decorating his house with tongue and groove boards. In this video we'll be covering up his popcorn ceiling to give this outdated living room a new fresh look. We began this project by setting up a working area where the boards will be varnished and sanded down. We purchased the tongue and groove boards from our local Home Depot. They are 16 feet long and we used a truck rack to take them home. Each board was coated with Hellsman spar urethane and left to dry. After that, we sanded down the board to knock down the wood grain and to get a smooth finish. A second coat was then applied to each board. This process was done to only the side of the board that will be visible, while the underside was kept untreated. While my father worked on the boards, inside the house I began to look for the ceiling rafters using a stud finder and marking the location. You will notice that each marking has two adjacent lines. This is because I used a drywall saw to identify the edges of the rafter so that I can get an accurate center line. The reason for this is that we used a chalk line to mark the span of the rafters. The tongue and groove boards will be nailed to the ceiling rafters, so it's important that we correctly identify their location. Using a small pancake compressor and nail gun, we anchored the first board to the ceiling. The board was test fitted and cut back shorter to leave space on both edges to allow for expansion. We installed more boards on the ceiling until we reached the ceiling lights. The next board was then held up on the ceiling so we can mark the outline of the ceiling light fixtures. And with a jigsaw, the outline of the light fixture was cut out. The board was then nailed onto the ceiling. Sometimes the boards wouldn't easily join together, and using a small wooden block and a hammer, we tapped those boards into place before nailing them on the ceiling. We then continued nailing more boards to the ceiling until we got to the next set of light fixtures. And once again, we marked out the outline of the holes and cut them out, and continuing nailing the boards to the ceiling until we got to the last one. We used a table saw to shorten the last board to get it to fit in place. Once all the boards were installed, we put back the recessed lights. We then began to prepare the second half of the ceiling by marking the locations of the ceiling rafters using a chalk line, and once that was done, we nailed the first board to the ceiling. We then continued nailing more boards until we got to the first set of ceiling lights again. We marked the outline of the lights and cut it out with the jigsaw. After that, we nailed the board to the ceiling. We continued installing more boards until we reached the edge of the ceiling again. For the last board, we ran it through the table saw to get it trimmed to the correct size, but we also placed an angle cut on the edge of the board to make it easier to fit the corner of the ceiling. The last board was nailed to the ceiling while leaving a small gap on the edge to allow for any movement or expansion. Here's what the ceiling looked like, all finished and with some fresh paint on the walls. If you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more DIY projects and home improvements.